Everybody, welcome back to Dad Talk. Today we got a very special guest, Mr. Kevin Mcgary. How you doing, Kevin?
Doing well, thank you.
So Kevin, the name of your organization is?
Every Black Life Matters.
Every Black Life Matters, repping the shirt. I really like that, my man.
Yes, sir.
Tell us a little bit about what your organization's about.
So with Black Lives Matter, what we realized is that they're strictly, very narrowly focused on police brutality. And we thought, well, if that was, you know, the culmination of Black life, that would be okay. But the reality is Black life has all kinds of potential plight at various phases throughout the life cycle. So we said, well, if Black life is most threatened in a womb, then we should be concerned about that. We should be concerned about early childhood development. We should be concerned about education resources. We should be concerned about fatherhood. We should be concerned about police brutality and criminal justice reform. So the entire life cycle is what we should be concerned about, not just one narrow phase of potential Black life. So we started Every Black Life because we wanted a holistic approach to actually providing solutions that actually help enhance Black life. And so that's what we're all about.
That's awesome, brother. How long has this been going?
Just about 60 days.
Oh.
So we started immediately because what we realized is Black Lives Matter had accumulated in contributions about $2 billion in 90 days.
Wow.
And we said, well, wait a minute, there's a lot of corporations, there's a lot of people that agree with the sentiment, but there's a whole mass of people that understand what Black Lives Matter is and the areas that they don't address, that don't really want to say Black Lives Matter in that way. They are looking for an alternative. And these are people of faith, these are people of moral character, and they really wanted something else to say. So we wanted to start something that would provide a counter narrative, provide people the ability to come alongside of us and our works and help us to do works in the community that actually help enhance Black life.
Absolutely. We was talking a little bit earlier on. I was telling you about when we had Colonel West on the show, the conversation we had. He was talking about, he's from my neck of the woods over in Georgia.
Yeah.
He was talking about in the 70s, you know, when he grew up, 20% of the homes were without a father. For the most part, the African American community, the home was the most important thing.
Yes.
We're at almost around an 80% of homes without father. What's going on?
So there's a lot of things that really precipitated that cycle, right? But what I do want to say right up front is that Black life is enhanced when a father is in the home.
Absolutely.
We can reduce crime and poverty by about 70% just by having a father connected to the children, whether they're actually living the house, that would be ideal, or just still connected to the child or children in some way. That makes a major difference. So with that said though, what happened is with the programs of welfare and dependency, LBJ's program, which really provided incentives for fathers to leave the home, to not be in the home, in order to maximize the welfare dollars that would be given to the mother. That really sort of precipitated the cycle that we now see today.
Right.
And so what you have are a lot of fathers that are completely disconnected from their children. And when children are disconnected from their father, they have a tendency to be more, you know, prone to gang violence and other crimes. Right. And ultimately the community suffers in a big way because of that.
Absolutely. I was having a conversation with one of my friends one night, and I had one of my white friends and I had my black friend. We was talking about this, and I said, man, let me ask you a question. Where does that stigma come from? Yeah. And it's hard to get people to talk on that just because of the unrest that we have nowadays, especially with racism. But you know, he was telling me they had two different stories. My one buddy was telling me, man, when I had a kid, I grew up, I accepted responsibility, and I became dad. That changed my whole life. I got mother, guy over here. He's like, I had my first child at 16. I was in the ghetto. I didn't have opportunity. Yeah. He's like, it wasn't that I was a deadbeat. He was like, there was nothing for me. What can we do about getting some more resources?
Well, I think the first thing that we need to do is we need programs like your show and other programs that highlight the impact. Because see, what happens is it's easy for fathers to walk away and never be connected to the children and just have children here and there, never be connected to them if they don't think there's a real consequence to it. If they understand that that child's life is greatly, significantly impacted in a negative way, then that's new education that we can help young men and men come around to seeing, and that will help them at least remain connected. They still may not get along with the mother of the child, and that's okay. That sometimes you just have people that can't get along. That's okay. Right. So we're not saying that you have to necessarily live in it. That would be ideal. That is the ideal scenario. But what we are saying is when you completely abandon the child and you have no interaction, they haven't heard from you in years, and that is the issue. And so what we want to do is really educate young men and men on the effects, the sort of negative effects that it has if you are completely disconnected from your child. And then that will help them at least remain connected even in a tertiary type of a way, where they at least check with them on a few times a month, check with them on homework, and help and be a mentor. Ideally, we want fathers to grow to the extent that as they start to work and become responsible, they start to share more and more with their children, so the children can see that positive influence on their life. And we want them to mentor their children and actually be a father in that way, and disciple. Hopefully there's a Christian influence in their life and they can actually disciple their children as well. If we can complete that cycle, that's what would allow those children to live a more productive, a more successful lifestyle that sets them on a whole different platform, a whole different plateau. And so ultimately that's really what we want to communicate with fathers. So to answer in a long way, answer your question, I think it boils down to communicating this message and educating young men as to the disastrous impact it can have on the children if they just disconnect.
Right, and I know you mentioned this earlier as well, but it's not just the black community.
No.
The fatherlessness is an epidemic worldwide,
everywhere.
Not just here in the United States,
Absolutely.
guys. I got people from all over the world that will tell you just how big that is. And when I started studying up on the statistics, now we know 7 times more likely for your kid to get pregnant, the risk of suicide, obesity, it goes on and on and on.
Yep.
And it just increases all these risks for your children.
All of them increase exponentially.
And it's just not a thing. And it's like the role of a father is just kind of second class nowadays, and that really bothers me.
Yeah.
Kevin, I'd like to ask you a question here too, because you touched about it briefly with LBJ Society, and it's gotten worse since then. Ziv Sistrunk, maybe you remember him from CPAC?
Yeah.
He was the manager for the Rod Blagojevich campaign.
Oh, okay.
And he's like, I'm a Trumpocrat.
Yeah,
Trumpocrat.
right.
He was a Democrat, but because President Trump actually pardoned Rod Blagojevich and said he's putting the father back in the home.
Yes.
I am a Trumpocrat.
Yes.
But what we're finding a lot of times, these things that you're talking about, there's many fathers that want to do just that, and it is still government policy that is keeping them out. So there was one man that testified down in Houston not too long ago, and he was talking to the mayor. He said, look, you're killing me. I want to be involved in my children's life. And they keep on saying, be patient, you'll get involved. He says, well, how? I've been doing this for years. Do I have to wait till they turn 18?
Right.
And so our government right now is actually, and I hate to say this, but to me, our government policies are incentivizing a father not being in the home, and the fathers are being called deadbeats, but really it's the deadbeat policies, because a lot of fathers want to be there.
They want to be connected.
Or they go there.
They're dead broke.
Well, it's not just that, but they want to be there, and then the mother says, well, you can't make a false accusation, a false charge against them. And it's like, wait a minute, I want to be with my children, but I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to be broke. I don't want to have to live in the street. The one guy was saying, listen, here's how much money I have left over. I don't even have enough for my apartment. How am I supposed to do anything with my kids? Right. It's just don't worry, just be patient. And have you addressed the issue of government policies at all?
No. So first of all, we're just starting, especially with our fatherhood initiative.
Gotcha.
So we're just getting that underway. So But you do bring up a good issue. When there is, so the education is two ways. It's not just to educate young men and men in general on the sort of diminished impact that it has on their children, but also the mother. See, because when they continue to put up the roadblocks that would allow that father to be engaged, just in spite of him, just despite him, but what they don't realize is the impact, the significant negative impact it's actually having on their children. All mothers would want the best for their children. So so we have to educate in theory. So what we have to do is educate both sides, right? Of we really need some degree of unification here with the father and child. We get it that you and the father don't get along. That's fine. They're not really fine, but I mean, we understand that that's the way it is right now. So why don't we come up with a scenario where we work in the best interest of the child? It's been proven scientifically, it's been proven psychologically and physiologically, the impact of having a father involved. And so if that mother now went to CPS and said, look, I do want to reunify my children or my child with the father, then that would carry a lot more weight. Right now, what's happening is a lot of women are fighting against the father being, just to spite the father.
But the other instance as well, you're talking about father and mother, which is very important. But the government policies are actually creating an adverse society for a father to do this. When the government is saying that we want your money, child support is money, it's not your presence in that child's life. And the government is actually has ways, because of different funding mechanisms that they go after. They break a father who's normally the person who pays child support, or a mother if it's her, because it creates revenue for the state. So, but the education of our legislators, the education of our attorneys, the education of our governors, the education of the attorney general, of our police officers that don't enforce. I know a man right now, he's trying to see his children. It is a felony in the state of Texas, and the police officers will never enforce this stuff. And
Jeff, you mentioned about the money that's being made. Kevin, are you familiar with Title 40 of the Social Security Act?
No, I'm not. No.
Can you give him a little brief synopsis on what you meant by that?
So with the Title 4D, it's actually a fund that was set away. Originally, I believe it was to help, I'm not sure about all of the intents of it, but what it does is that the state, like for example, in our state, in the Texas Family Code, 201.107C, it says that the judge must create an order in such a manner so as to maximize Title 4D funds. So they talk about the best interest of the child in the family code about 140 times, but when it comes right down to it, the judge must make a decision that maximizes this funds coming in.
Wow.
What does that mean? What it means is that we don't want equal parenting. We want an adversarial relationship, because in this way now we have an easier time justifying confiscating somebody's money. In Texas in particular, we have I think it's one of 5 states that only one person has to pay child. They base everything off of one income. So if you're the father, you may have to pay everything, and the mother may actually be making much more than you. But you can go to jail. And I mean, it's the state policy, and I don't think we address this enough, because Helen Smith wrote this book about why men don't marry, and she looked at it from a risk-benefit point of view, and she said, why should men marry? Marriage can be the greatest blessing, but it's also the greatest liability, and the liability by far is greater than the reward you may get from it, especially when at a moment's notice, bang, there's an accusation and you're guilty by accusation. So I mean, it's just a different thing. I know that I appreciate everything that you're doing, but I think that for us, like in Texas, we're trying to educate our legislators. Because
that's big.
And the biggest problem, one of the biggest problems we have is the family law attorneys. They make money off of conflict, and they have legislators in their back pocket. So we go to testify. The last time we testified, and these are I wasn't down there for this in particular, but they mopped the floor with the Texas family law attorneys. I mean, they mopped the floor with them, and yet they were still able to kill the bill, because these attorneys that they that profess to act in the best interest of the child are acting in the best interest of their pocketbooks. Because that creates animosity. Animosity creates conflict, which creates lawsuit, which we charge $350, $400, $450 an hour. So you're breaking fathers, breaking mothers, and it does, and our state is allowing this to take place. So that's another aspect.
Divorces became a $55 billion a year industry.
Wow.
We are at a 55% divorce rate. When I was talking about Title 4D, there's actually a federal program.
Oh yeah, thank God. Didn't even
every dollar paid in child support that I pay or Jeff pays, the federal government actually pays a percentage of that dollar back to the states.
Wow.
Most people don't know that. The states make billions of dollars off of making sure fathers, mothers pay child support.
Wow. Wow.
So, and that's the perverse incentive.
Yeah, that's
now
definitely perverse.
I haven't seen the exact figures, but I know we talked with the Attorney General one time. I actually had it on videotape talking about how much money he makes and everything.
Wow.
And what I do know is this: in our state in Texas, a bragging point is how efficient they are at collecting child support. That they have led the nation, I think, for the last 13 years now.
Wow.
And it makes a lot. It makes a lot of money. So basically, what they're doing, and I hate to say this, but I think that they're using the children as a way to make money.
That's what it sounds like.
It sounds like trafficking your kids or pimping them out. I'm not trying to.
Those legislators, it seems to me that again, I think everybody requires some education about how important fathers are.
Yeah.
And this whole equation, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like our legislators and some of the policies around legislation for certain states.
Yeah. Well,
they do have a perverse incentive.
Almost every state.
Yeah, almost every state. And so what we have to refocus everybody on is the significance and the importance of having fathers involved in the lives of their children.
And I'm glad because what they've actually started to do now in Texas is this one lady, Cynthia Osborne. She works out of UT Austin, I believe it is. But she started to talk about this issue with the fathers, the importance of fathers. And here she is, and I believe she has some grants from the government, from the state. I'm not positive. But her recommendations are this, and yet we don't follow through with them. And the second thing is that the recommendations kind of go to here when they should go to here, because we still have to keep the funding mechanism for the state intact.
There should be no profit off the destruction of broken families. We need to have some type of incentive.
And the feds should not be kicking in for that.
But it's just surprising, Kevin, because when we was in CPAC earlier this year in Washington, we sat down politician after politician, legislator, and none of them knew about what we just talked about.
Does it sound crazy to you?
It does. I wonder if Dr. Carson with HUD, of course, if he's involved in this, or if he has some visibility as to what's happening here.
So, I've never got to speak with Dr. Carson. We've been up there and we've missed him each time. But I did speak with somebody from the Health and Human Services, not in charge, but like the second person in charge. And what I really was impressed about what he said is that we're trying to get our policy right, because we realize policy is destroying families, and if we get it wrong, we're hurting families.
So they are sensitive to this and trying to fix it.
There are people that know about it, but the problem is, if I'm going to tell you, Kevin, we're going to fix this problem, but we're going to take about, millions of dollars from you. Wait a minute, don't fix the problem. The problem is my livelihood.
And we have to be careful when we talk about that. Because once they hear that. But what we could do is change the incentives.
So exactly.
Because I think, and I don't know everything about this, but to me, I've tried to think, why do they have this? Because it comes from the Social Security Fund. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, maybe they're thinking that if we take this money from the Social Security Fund right now, if the kids turn out okay, they'll repay it in the future. But the problem is, they're destroying kids, and they're destroying fathers. And this is becoming, and I think you know this too, because these issues are transgenerational. Part of the reason that a 16-year-old may not know to become a good father is because he didn't have a good father who was kicked out of his life. And Zipf Sistrunk, what he said is that, when he was in Chicago, he said when the social worker came, my daddy had to either hide or run out of the house, because if they saw him in the house, he would lose money. And what does that teach a younger generation?
Exactly.
Exactly.
And it can be cyclical, and so you're exactly right. What happens is a lot of young people they see life as it's played out before them,
Right.
and they don't understand the nuances of what
Right.
have happened. But so they think it's perfectly acceptable to follow the same pattern
Yeah.
that they've already seen played out in their own
Yeah.
lives. And before you know it, we have generation upon generation, cycle upon cycle of these, fatherlessness.
Right.
And we have, and we have a real epidemic like what we have now, with approximately 80% of black children without a father.
So what I want, and I've asked several people this, and I want to get your opinion. I've heard, like the issue about when they talk about block rage at times.
Yeah.
Is it displaced anger? Because the way that I look at it, and I may be completely wrong, but when you're a black male or a white male, you've got to be a certain macho or whatever, but you're hurting.
Yeah.
And you can't express hurt, or people will pick on you, they'll bully you, they'll call you weak. But if you use that anger and that rage to address it to somebody else, destroy society, destroy a weak person or whatever, you may get a certain type of, he's a really tough guy. But really, it's displaced anger because where's my daddy?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
especially somebody saying that, your daddy doesn't want you, and that may be not the truth at all.
Right. I think that when we see what's happening now in the streets, I do believe that there's a lot of displaced anger, and it's manifesting because a lot of these people, and I'm just drawing a generalization, may not have had a father influence.
Right.
So they don't really have the sort of standards or the restraint or the discipline that it would take. And as a result of that, when most of their family has been in the community, right, gangs and just other friends, it's easy for them to be pulled into then, hey, let's go act out, let's go, take our, let's go get violent and take our rage out on the community. And so I think what we're seeing now is very much the result of a lot of our young and our youth really having this, to a large degree, this pent up anger. We don't really know at the individual level what's happening there, but I think you could surmise that fatherlessness can be an aspect of what we see in the community. Right?
Kevin, I appreciate you so much for having this conversation with us tonight, letting us share a little bit with you and vice versa. Tell everybody a little bit about where they can find you if they want to keep up with what you're doing.
Yeah, please join us. If you wouldn't go to our website, it's www.everyblm.com or .org. That's everyblm.com or .org. You could ask to join our newsletter and membership teams, and we've got all kinds of great things on the website, great resources, a store. We'd love to have you on board as a partner with us, so please join us there. And you can find out more about the initiatives, the many things that we do, and what we have planned. So would appreciate any of your support.
Thank you so much. It was really, really wonderful to meet you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
And
thank you again. All right.
Looking forward to it again.
All right. Awesome.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Everybody stick around. We'll be right back.
All right. Bye now.
Hey.